All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage. And all the men and women, merely players.
Merely players.
Merely players.
Merely players.
Boston Podcast Players.
This is Greg Lamb. I'm the house manager for Boston Podcast Players. And today I welcome back an old friend.
This is Mara Palma, the stage manager for Boston Podcast Players.
And today we do not have a featured playwright, as today we are wrapping up season one, all of season one of the podcast.
Wow.
We will get to what that means in a moment. But first, let's have an update on the life of one Mara Alyssa Palma. Listeners of the podcast might have recognized that you were absent for a couple of our interview segments, and that is because we have lost you to Seattle during the summer, where I presume you will be soon starting the Seattle Podcast Players any day now.
Ooh.
Can we assume that?
Hey, the opportunity is there. I don't know if there are any current Seattle-based new play podcasts.
I mean, you're an experienced podcaster now, so it should come easy.
And you did say, after some of those interviews, that don't send us your scripts, just start your own.
Right. And I still feel that.
Yeah.
So, would you like to speak about your move to Seattle and what you've been up to since you've gone?
Ooh, yeah, absolutely. Well, for one, resharing from Facebook whenever we have a new podcast episode.
Yeah.
So even from afar, I can support from my computer.
But speaking of Facebook, every time I look on Facebook, every
Yeah.
like week or so, you're in the middle of a new cool project.
Yeah. Well, we have a theater company that we both worked with, Porkfield Productions, PFP, so shout out to them.
Yep.
Where you had one of your plays featured in their staged reading festival called Unleashed.
Yep. It was in
Repossessed.
November. Yeah,
That's
Repossessed
right.
was read there.
Absolutely.
They did a fine job.
And I was in that same festival as an actor in a play by Korean-American playwright Shi Young-Yim called Persimmon Nights,
All right.
which will be having a full production next summer.
Oh, cool.
So obviously stay tuned for that. I was able to develop a 5-minute solo performance piece called The F Word about my family's sacrifices to come to the U.S. and about how I am navigating what it's like to be a Filipina American in 2017.
And this was via Intamin Theater?
Correct. My name is Mara Alyssa Palma. I'm applying to the Intamin Emerging Artist Program. I have a monologue, Paulina from The Winter's Tale, and Meg from Crimes of the Heart. So I was part of the Emerging Artist Program this year.
And that was the reason why you went to Seattle in the first place.
Correct. That is how I flew the coop at first. And we were guided through writing our own solo shows this summer by Sarah Porkalob, who is an amazing performer and writer out in Seattle. She created a one-woman new Filipina gangster musical called Dragon Lady, which she'll be bringing to Cambridge, actually, to the ART. So shameless plug for that. We've got some cross-pollination of Boston and Seattle artists.
Okay, great.
So just that's a highlights reel.
Highlights.
Yeah.
There were more that I remember.
Yeah, there are definitely more.
It's been a few weeks now. I'm in the show.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's go circle back to the podcast.
Absolutely.
So what did you learn about playwriting in working on season one and talking with everyone and producing all of these episodes?
I think a big thing is that there's a desire for it. I think there's a desire and a hunger for other kinds of media besides our common one, stage and bringing our words to life in a physical space. I think this is a different kind of space, and there's a hunger for finding new avenues and new ways to get our work out there.
Right.
And I was really inspired by all of us because we did a thing. Yeah. I am really proud of all of us.
It's a cool thing. I mean, the talent, I didn't choose the 8 playwrights of season one as much as I just said to the people that Company 1 chose, hey, let's do this.
Yes.
So sort of Company 1 doing the assembling of the team.
We were amped amplifying those voices.
Right. Yeah, but we were all here. We all wanted to progress and be able to share our work with others.
Yeah.
And this was the avenue which I knew how to do because I've been podcast obsessed for years now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that it's turned out the way it is.
Great.
And I thought we were like the first. And then as we were putting together the first episode, I had heard of another podcast which was doing table reads of plays. That was called At the Table from Charging This Media in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so they beat us to the market by like 6 months.
Oh.
And, in the fall, I went and just looked for every podcast about playwriting or playwrights there was. And then I come up with 19 different ones.
19?
Yeah. Some of them are interviews with playwrights.
Sure.
Some of them are readings. There are 19 out there. I think that number will grow. I put it on a page on our website.
Yes.
That you can look up.
And what's our website again, Greg?
BostonPodcastPlayers.com. Very smooth.
We also have a Patreon account we were just discussing.
Yeah. We were discussing Patreon and how easy it is to set up and how perhaps not easy it is to get people to contribute. But contributing to it would be huge for us if you are so inclined and if you've enjoyed season 1 and you would like there to be a season 2 and beyond.
Yes, because you believe in paying artists for their work.
Right.
And because arts funding is an investment and a priority for you and your family.
You can support us on Patreon at Boss Podplay.
And more on that later.
Absolutely.
So what were some of your favorite moments from season 1?
I mean, I have very fond memories of all of us hanging out on Mary's porch and quietly eating snacks while people recorded in the other room. It's always about food for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was really encouraged when I saw the change even just from first rehearsal early in the morning to say our third or fourth recording.
Right.
I don't know about if you noticed, but even just the actors were incredible at what they do, hence why we worked with them.
To go behind the scenes, we only give ourselves a 2-hour window
Correct.
from when everyone meets each other
Correct.
to when we have to wrap the recording of the excerpts.
Yes.
Some excerpts have gone rehearsed beforehand. Is that right?
Some
I think Mary's has.
Correct.
Jasenia's was already a thing.
Yes. So
that
depending
recorded.
on the playwright and their needs and
Right.
availability and depending on the actors as well.
Yeah.
For the most part, we tried to draw from local Boston actors and artists, and some of them had, of course, known each other or connected with each other, but perhaps hadn't seen the script yet.
Right.
Or said the words out loud until that day.
Yeah. Well, we sent the script ahead of time so they can read it, but
Yes.
it wasn't
Yes, we
completely
did.
cold.
Mm-hmm. But really, how many of us read script? Well, I read scripts before I show up for something. But
I'm not primarily an actor, so I can't really say.
Well, I'll speak for some of us. How about you, Greg? Any memorable moments for you?
I loved Mary's whole interview
Yes.
because she's had such a life.
Yes.
And just such a perspective on things.
What were the years you were doing Street Feet?
Yeah, a number of years, not only as people of color, but as women. We wanted to write and perform our own work. We did that for we're still doing it, but mostly we're writing now. We took 2 shows to the United Nations Decade for Women Conference, one in Nairobi. So we toured when we were in Kenya. And then 10 years later, we went to China. We took 10-minute pieces of each woman's part, and we traveled with the stage manager, director, the whole 9 yards.
And when
we
you
were there.
Perform overseas like that, who's your audience?
In Kenya, we toured schools. We once performed in front of 500 girls in a high school, and we were absolutely sure that they didn't understand anything that we were doing on stage, but they all seemed to laugh in the right place. In China, we were at the United Nations conference, so there were women from all over the world, and many spoke English.
Also, when I finally tracked Jasenia down for an interview, I asked her a question to start off with. I'd like to ask a sort of curveball question to begin things. Whether she could think of a single Latinx character in all of pop culture that comes from Boston or is Boston-based.
No, and I've never actually thought about that, but no,
Yeah,
I
there are
can't think of...
White people, there are black people.
everybody that comes from Boston on screen or in theater, they're all Southie.
Yeah.
Southie, Irish, Italian, kind of that demographic. So no, I can't think of any story that has had a Latino, Latina.
We couldn't think of any.
Whoa.
Right?
Even movies or...
Right, movies, like any of the, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon movies
I was
in
just going to
Boston.
think that. Mm-hmm.
Cheers, Spencer for Hire, whatever. And, we just couldn't think of one. Now that I've had a couple months to think about it, I could Google a single Latino character name in a TV show called Boston Public.
Boston Public, okay.
Which is set in a school.
Excellent.
And there was one more that I saw.
But that's two.
Short. Yeah. And it's like 20% of the city.
Oh.
It's literally 20% of the people who live in the city boundaries of Boston.
Yes.
Are Latino. And we can't think of anything but two. I mean, Asians, we get, if you set something at MIT, we get a couple in the background. Even if it's like 21, where the story is based on. The main people were Asian, but you adapt to a movie.
Really?
The main people are white, and a couple of people in the back are Asian now.
Oh.
But at least,
I don't like that.
But, yeah. The other Latino character I could think of is Eduardo Savarine from Social Network. So I think he's technically Brazilian, so that would count as Latino. You have to dig deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's
and
just
Yesenia is part of that
right
group of emerging voices, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I sent her an email. She hasn't responded because she's hard to get to respond to emails.
She's a very busy artist.
That she should do that speakeasy stage thing they do every year.
Correct.
Where they commission a Boston-based play to be written.
Mm-hmm.
Because they like to look for parts of Boston that haven't been explored. Well,
yeah.
We just outlined in bold highlighter that there's a big blind spot in all of Boston pop culture.
Yes.
So the questions we asked playwrights every time, you were the one who wanted to have the question of how people came to Boston and what kept them there.
Yeah.
So how would you compare and contrast the Boston creative scene and the Seattle creative scene now that you have a taste of a different city?
Well, disclaimer, I've only been in Seattle for about 6 months, and I was in Boston about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So bear that in mind. I'm seeing a lot of new works in both. I think there's a lot of interest in developing new works and in finding ways to help those new works not just stay on the page. Plenty of writers groups that try to get staged readings for you. There's the first gig my first acting gig in Seattle was WARP, W-A-R-P Theater. That's writers and actors reading and performing. And their whole thing is that they commissioned 4 new plays to then receive a full production. And it was a long process. And it was around a theme, epic, a heroine's odyssey. And there's a lot of interest in making sure playwrights get their work out there. Mm-hmm. So I would say that it's really encouraging to find that both cities, there's lots of interest in new play development. Since I have discovered that I love advocating for new plays, and that I think that's going to be a really important part of our national conversation moving forward. I will say there's a lot more opportunities for teaching artists in Seattle, in the sense that, say, if you wanted to teach a high school curriculum around a certain show, or one of my goals is to become a teaching artist for playwriting, to be able to help young girls and women use their voices to lift themselves into a life they've always imagined, using writing to do so. There's a lot of opportunities in Seattle. I think that's one thing that I didn't fully explore in Boston. I'm sure those opportunities are there. It just was not as easily accessible. Yes. And one of the biggest draws for me in Seattle was the Asian American community, mm-hmm. both population-wise, but also the artists who were in town.
Right.
And Boston is trying, let me clarify. And there's certainly a collection of artists, as we both know, Greg,
yeah.
who are making their mark here. And there's progress. But to me, Seattle felt like they were just further along. I think because it's a numbers game, isn't it? Because they have people like Porkville Players, Kathy Shea and Roger Tang, who are big names in Seattle, who have been doing community-based work with the artists for years and years and years.
Yeah. I mean, Roger Tang's been running an Asian American email list for decades.
Really?
Yeah.
So had you known Roger?
I've just known his name because I just look at his emails now and again, and I actually met him when I went to Seattle.
Yeah. So to me, it became a desire to be part of that community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a common thread of the 8 of us of season 1.
Yes.
Because I think we've written the play that you're trying to put forward. We have our careers, whatever stage they're at, but none of us really figure out how to get it forward.
Yes.
And structurally, I think Boston sort of lacks ways to get things from where we are forward. Like, there's not a fringe scene. It's just hard to get ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Like, I just think back to Portland, Oregon.
Sure.
And there's some people who think, hey, wouldn't it be fun to stage Star Trek episodes as live theater in a park?
Yeah.
And then they just go and do it. And it's like a 5-year tradition.
I didn't know that.
I mean, that's just a thing. And I have friends who just sort of gravitated to Austin, Texas. And apparently if you go to Austin, Texas and live there for any amount of time, you get sucked into the improv scene. Mm-hmm. And then you're in 5 different improv groups all doing different weird things. And it's just, that momentum just sort of doesn't happen in Boston.
Yeah.
And
to be fair, I think there's a stab at it. I'll plug them right now. Fresh Ink Theater Company, who their whole mission is around new plays. But again, the capacity, right? They get to maybe do 3 shows each season.
Like 3 shows, 2 readings.
And
they're one
Ink
small.
Spot. Yeah. Ink Spot readings, amazing. You should check them out. I was part of one Ink Spot reading, that's why. And I believe your play was also in this past season.
Welcome to Chinatown Presents, the Ink Spot stage readings. We're trying to be partnering with Fresh Ink Theater, and we're excited to have the reading of 3% by Greg Lang.
Besides Fresh Ink, who else can you be sending your plays to?
Right. There's Fresh Ink. There's, if you're in the Boston Playwrights Theater workshop thing, then you get considered for the Boston Playwright Theater thing. Right. And there's Speakeasy does some things.
Yes, they do. The Boston Project, which you just mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And then after that, it's theaters that draw from, the cultural oeuvre of theater, but they're New Rep. Can't forget New Rep. Newton. They do new work development. Other than that, it's sort of maybe a thing here, maybe a thing there. There's nothing inserted. Right. And like the big showpiece of playwrights in Boston is the Boston Theater Marathon, which is in itself a sort of miraculous thing.
Yes.
50 new plays, 10 plays take place in a day.
Yes.
And I've been in that a number of times, and some friends of mine have.
That's right.
And that's great.
But the follow-up.
But nothing ever comes
next? Of it. Yes.
Like, I've been in 6 times. I've never gotten the request to show anything else. Or my people in my writing group, she's been in 5 times. Nothing. I asked in the Boston Playwrights list on Facebook. I asked if has anything ever progressed from a 10-minute play.
Yes.
Says everyone was like, no, they just did the 10-minute play. Nothing ever grew out of that except for Patrick Gabbridge, who's the hardest working playwright in America. And
fascinating case study.
So apparently if you work with a theater maybe 4 times, then they'll start asking you, hey, do you have anything else? We've discovered we like working with you.
And I wonder if part of that is that it does in fact take multiple touches with a theater company in different capacities, but it's really difficult not to let that be frustrating and to make it not feel like I'm going nowhere, right? Because it does take years to create this crazy, crazy career that we are all pursuing, but if you never are seen or recognized.
Right.
I hear what you're saying. It would be very easy to just throw the towel in.
My first Boston Theater Marathon appearance was in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been in a couple times, but because I didn't see progress in getting more ambitious works done in Boston, I just put my creative energies elsewhere.
Yes.
If I'd felt more of an opportunity to advance theater work, I would have concentrated on that. But instead, I designed board games and I published 11 self-published board games.
Wow.
That could have been 11 plays, but
because you can see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
Right?
I can teach you in 10 minutes how to pitch a board game to a major publisher. He'll give you 15 minutes of face-to-face time at a convention. You can show him your prototype, explain how it works, and he'll take it under advisement or just say, oh, thanks. But he will see it and you can talk to him. I don't know if I can talk to any of the artistic directors of the plays I've worked with in Boston Theater Marathon.
Oh, yeah?
Not really.
So do you think that's an issue of they're not making themselves available? Or do we, as playwrights, have to be more determined and pursue them, right? How do we get those email addresses? How do we...
I have their email addresses. I just don't know if I'm welcome to ask them to look at my play.
Ah, so how to do that?
Yeah.
Or whether or not I can or cannot do that.
Yeah, or whether they're in the market. I mean, it could just be that the theater that would actually look at the play is located in Wisconsin or Florida, and not Boston, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So that's why our response to what we learned at Company One Play Lab wasn't to organize a live reading of our work. It was to start a podcast, which can go anywhere.
It can. Yeah.
The hosting site recently added a geography thing.
Really?
Yeah. And
any surprises?
Iceland, Israel.
What?
Lots from the Philippines. I think that is your doing.
Thanks, Filipinos. Holla! Pinoy pride.
Yeah. Little hits here and there. At least our website has been accessed all those times and all those places. Actual podcast downloads, we don't have that data, but it can be downloaded there as easily as it can in the US. So it has a wider netcast, and that's exciting because Boston isn't the actual place where a lot of us will find the next step. And yeah, I was just thinking, of the 8 of us, it could be that if you check back on us in 5 years, I don't know how many of us are still going to be writing plays while in Boston.
I see.
You've already moved. Rosa talks openly about moving to New York, where her type of experimental theater is more her style. Colleen may or may not be studying to go to Ireland.
Wow.
I mean, she just keeps... If you follow her on Twitter, every other tweet is like her Irish Duolingo quizzes and things she finds funny there. But I think that's sort of in the back of her mind. People who have different creative interests, if we don't find a way forward in theater, then we might devote energy to game design for me. Ken could spend his time doing his storytelling. Ksenia does poetry. Other people do poetry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, check back in on us in 5 years. Are we going to be still Boston playwrights?
Yeah.
So it's a question that people, if you're in the theater community, have to ask themselves.
Yeah.
You might envision playwrights competing for your time and energy, but the theater community is also competing for playwrights' time and energy.
Absolutely.
We don't find fulfillment in theater, then we may not, A, remain in Boston, or B, remain playwrights.
Which is such a loss of creative potential, right? There's so much here, right? That's the whole point. It's like, look at all these smart people.
I mean, I think if you've listened to season 1, all of season 1, you found at least a couple of plays or that you really intrigue you. And maybe some that aren't to your taste, and then some in between. But I think most anyone will listen to the season and think that there's, some great potential. But
speaking of...
Will it be fulfilled?
Will it be fulfilled? And speaking of unfulfilled potential, I'm going to throw a question to you, Greg. Boston and Cambridge and just Massachusetts is jam-packed with educational institutions. And speaking of places that can invest in theater or playwriting or playwrights, do you think there's a role that universities could play in championing theater or the arts or playwrights?
I mean, a university will first and foremost have their own students, their best interests in mind, you would think. Certainly opportunities for things to, cross-pollinate and go from there. I don't know. It's just sort of a global, everyone can do a little bit more. The podcast is our way to promote playwrights and playwriting in Boston.
Yeah.
And I'd like for anyone who's interested in playwriting, if you're in any sort of position of power, to just think of a way to promote playwriting in Boston.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of, there's a lot of talent there. There's not a lot of institutional momentum.
Yes. Or support.
And I'd like to see that change.
Yeah. If you have any ideas, email us or tweet at us.
And if you have any money, our Patreon account is linked to our website.
Yes, it is.
Go there and help out. And yeah, speaking of funding, I did want to let you know, because you've been out of the loop for a while.
Yeah.
There is news on that front.
Woohoo!
I caught wind of a organization called the Bob Jolly Charitable Trust, because I saw posted somewhere that someone said I got funding for my theater project from the Bob Jolly Charitable Trust. I said, oh, what is the Bob Jolly Charitable Trust?
What a great question, Greg.
So I looked it up and I saw that it was dedicated to a local actor, Bob Jolly, I believe, and then
also Boston or
Boston area. Yeah,
Boston
so it's
area.
local. Yeah,
excellent.
So I contacted the person running it and then found out how to apply, and I applied to support the podcast, and we have gotten support from them.
Excellent.
For I don't know if I should say that now, but we're getting a support for the next 12 episodes.
Yes.
At which point we can reapply for the same thing.
Woohoo!
Presumably if they're happy with the next 12, then we can do it. So that means we're officially saying there is going to be a season 2 and beyond of Boston Podcast Players.
Yes! Congratulations, Boston Podcast Players, and all our listeners.
And yeah.
Someone's invested in us, you should invest in us too.
And yeah, so...
Yeah,
for most people in season 1, they just came and did things because it was fun, or, why not?
Correct.
But now it will offer them at least a small stipend or a small honorarium. I don't know what you would call it, but it's not gonna put you through college, but it will be a token of appreciation for your talent and efforts.
And I had been advocating for that. I think while a lot of the arts, and especially theater, is run on the blood, sweat, and tears of volunteers and artists and administrators, we should be paid for our work.
Yeah.
We should be paid for our work.
And in addition to helping playwrights, I listed everyone who contributed to season 1 on our website.
Fantastic.
So if you had a performance that you liked, you can look up that actress or that actor and then see the name, and then you can use that to try to find that person if you want them involved in your project.
Hire them. Pay them. And then hire them again. Refer them to someone.
Yep. Actors are listed. Playwrights are listed.
Excellent.
Actors are listed. And we'll keep that up as this thing goes forward.
Yes. You better subscribe. Season 2 coming down the pipeline.
Right. And so obviously we can't have Mara remain as co-host since she's all the way as far away from us as possible. We're not going to Hawaii. We're going to have a new co-host. Actually, I think more accurate is that we have a new lead host.
Ooh.
Vanessa Greenleaf. And she was a friend of Mara's.
Correct. And a fellow Company 1 Playlab member.
Right. She was Company 1 Playlab the year after us, so 2017. A fellow graduate of Wellesley.
Woot woot! Wellesley College!
I say fellow graduate because Mara went to Wellesley. I did
yes.
not. It was a women's only college. And I have basically given her the mandate that she can do whatever she wants with it, given that it just is about Boston playwriting, supporting Boston playwrights. So
absolutely.
I believe she will put it forward. She has already redesigned the website, blink of an eye, and given a new logo.
That's right.
And she wants to do it twice a month.
Excellent.
And I don't know when things will start happening in terms of actually getting people in rooms and recording. But when it happens, we will let people know. I'm going to have an interview with Vanessa at some point.
That's right.
And we can put more details there, but just news to Mara, news to you.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. It will continue.
Yes.
Boston Podcast Players will go on.
Absolutely.
And we hope you join us for season 2 and beyond.
It's been an honor, Greg.
You too.
This is our sign-off.
I know.
Isn't that crazy? Well, okay, sign-off from me. I don't know about you.
We are going on a break for a while. I don't know. I'm not sure when first episode of season 2 will drop, but catch up on all of season 1, listen to it again.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. This has been Boston Podcast Players.
Goodbye.
That was a wrap-up conversation with Season 1 co-host Emeritus, Mara Alyssa Palma. Now, since we recorded that, there is an interesting footnote about the discussion of Boston as a town for playwrights. I received some good news that after 16 years of writing in Boston, I will have my first full production of a full-length play. Repossessed will have its world premiere this August at Theater Conspiracy in Fort Myers, Florida. So yes, my first full-length play will be produced in Florida, and not Boston. Just think on that for a bit. Now, as to the podcast, we have a few more details in place. As we mentioned earlier, our new co-host is Vanessa Greenleaf, and we will begin recording new episodes in the spring and early summer. Just this week I started contacting playwrights to set up interview times, so it's really happening. We should be able to start publishing Season 2 by the fall of 2018, and when we do, we're going to aim for 2 episodes per month. Now, instead of both Vanessa and I being present for these tapings and interviews all the time, we will divide and conquer. We will each record episodes separately and publish episodes alternating between the 2 of us. Now, as you know, Season 1 of the podcast focused on the people who were with me in the Company One Play Lab unit in 2016. For Season 2, we were going to open up the circle and talk to a wide assortment of Boston playwrights. Established playwrights, emerging playwrights, playwrights from all walks of life. We'll feature a list of playwrights that is diverse in every sense of the word to show the depth and breadth and variety and creativity of the talent here in Boston. If you are a playwright and are wondering how to get on the show, here's how we're going to choose future guests. We're going to keep our eyes and ears open, and we'll ask people we know, people we've heard of, people we've wanted to talk to, people that other people we trust tell us that we have to have on the show. We will approach these playwrights and ask what work they want to feature. We've made a list. There are many names on this list already, and many more to come. If you're a playwright in Boston, your name may already be on the list. If that's the case, you really need to make sure this podcast survives long enough to get to your episode. Because if we can grow the podcast, we can shine the spotlight on a wide variety of Boston playwrights. We want to raise the profiles of every playwright that we have on this show and make things happen that otherwise would not. We need you, the listener, to be along for the ride and to help spread the word. I can't emphasize this enough. We're relying on our listeners to let other people know about the podcast. Rate us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Support us on Patreon. Contact us. Ask us how you can help. Tell your theater friends, your podcast friends. If we are going to make this podcast an institution that can actively help the careers of Boston playwrights, we need your help to make it happen. I'm sorry to go all NPR pledge drive on you, but it's the absolute truth. Now with that, I bid you adieu, and I'll see you all in the fall for Season 2.
Our theme uses music from Snowman by the Neils. To learn more about the band, see www.neils.com.